Hi everyone, it's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alanna and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the last 6 years. Recently, I went on social media and asked you guys, do you have any questions about the UK? And I got so many good questions. So I'm going to answer as many as I can, as brutally honest as I can. The whole point of this channel is that I want to be brutally honest about living in the UK. I know that offends some people, but to be honest, I'd rather be honest than to sugarcoat it. So I'm going to answer your questions. I'm also going to try and put timestamps down below in case you have a particular one that you are interested in. And I hope you like this video. If you like this video and you want to see more videos of what it's truly like being a foreigner living in the UK, please consider subscribing. But without further ado, let's go. Now, to start off, I got a lot of questions about money. Just general questions about money, because guess what? Money is scary. In my opinion, knowing where your money is, how you are spending your money, how much money you have is absolutely vital in order for this whole being a foreigner abroad to be successful. For example, as a visa holder, so I am not allowed in the UK without a valid visa, of which of course I pay for the visa itself. I also pay into the NHS. On top of all of those sorts of fees, like a citizen, I pay taxes, I pay national insurance, I also pay tax as a self-assessment on all my Adventures in Naps earnings. So I'm paying tax just like everybody else. However, I am not allowed to access public funds. So even though I pay national insurance, I pay tax, I am not allowed to make use of any of those public programs. So if I lost my job or I was made redundant or something happened, because things do happen, I am not allowed any public funds. So as a foreigner, there are a lot less safety nets for you financially. So it means more than ever, you need to understand your own money. If you want to learn more, I have a whole video on budgeting and how I budget my money. I use a paid program, which is not necessary. I just personally love it and I'm happy to budget to pay for that software. But whatever you use, whether it is an Excel spreadsheet, whether it is a piece of paper and a pen, you have to budget your money because there are a lot less safety nets being a foreigner. Just the way it is. On top of that, if something goes wrong, a lot of people say, okay, I'm gonna move back home, I'm gonna regroup, I'm gonna save money, I'll be at home, so my expenses will be quite little to nothing perhaps, and I'm just gonna regroup. As a foreigner, of course, I can't just do that. I can't just move back in with my mom because that would be going back to Canada. So as a foreigner, you gotta be on point with your money. Another question I got is, how do you cope with the visa uncertainty? That's a great question. Like I mentioned, I am a visa holder, so I am not allowed to be in the UK without a valid visa, and mine will be up for renewal again in 2023. So I have to go through the entire process again. I have to reapply, I have to repay, and I have to wait for their approval. And there is no guarantee that it will be approved. And that as a concept, until you are in it, is very difficult to know what that feels like. So how do I deal with it? The best I can. I think on one hand, it's very important not to stress about it too much that you're gonna have a breakdown, but you can't ignore it either. So visas all need documentation to prove your case, basically. So throughout the years, you want to be accumulating documents, especially hard copy, official documents from government, or letters from the council. Every time a letter comes in that I think, this might be helpful for a future visa, I have a document folder. I just put everything in there. So when the time comes and I'm starting to get stressed out about the application, about the renewal, I've done some work over the years. I know I have some documents and I can put those towards the new visa. So it's kind of like a balancing act between stressing out too much but ignoring it completely. You kind of have to just find something that works for you. But to be honest, it's terrifying. And there's no way of getting around that fear, unfortunately. Another question I got was all about doctors and specialists, which this is a great question. So essentially, back home in America and Canada, you may have a gynecologist, you may have a dermatologist, you may have a specialist that you see every so many months or maybe once a year. And this person was asking, how does this work in the UK? How do you get specialist treatment? How do you get moles looked at? What's the process? And this is a great question, and I actually had to Google it. So this is what the NHS says, which is quite interesting. And thank you for asking this question because I myself did not understand. Here we go. You are entitled to ask for a referral for specialist treatment on the NHS. However, whether you'll get that referral depends on what your GP feels is clinically necessary. If you wish to be referred to a specialist in a particular field, like a gynecologist or a dermatologist, you should see the GP you're registered with. This is because all of your medical records are with them. They also generally understand your health history, and they're gonna have the most knowledge to make a decision. If you ask your GP to refer you to a specialist, they'll probably suggest that you first try various tests or treatment options to see whether your condition improves. Generally, you cannot self-refer to a specialist within the NHS except for certain circumstances. A specialist will only see you with a letter from your GP. So what I thought was quite interesting is that here in the UK, it tends to be that they want you to go to your GP first and foremost, and ideally always. Just go to the GP. If you ask them for a referral to see a specialist, they are going to make a decision whether they think that is a good idea or not. Now, if you have maybe a history, like if you have skin cancer in your family's history, medical history, and you want to be checked out more frequently than just some random person, perhaps they would take that into account. It really depends on what your GP thinks is appropriate. So my unprofessional advice would be to meet with your GP. First, make sure you're registered with a GP. That has to happen first. Meet with your GP, explain your situation. If you have a history of something or you have a family history of something, perhaps that will entice them to refer you to somebody, but either way, you're gonna have to see your GP first. Same with like sexual health stuff that you might go to a gynecologist in America. A lot of that stuff is just dealt with your GP or like their nurses in terms of like a pap smear or any of that kind of fun stuff rather than a specialist. A lot of that seems to be done with your GP. I hope that helps. Another question I got was about packing. How do you pack your entire life in a suitcase? Great question. Now, I would actually recommend doing what I did. So I bought 2 huge suitcases. I checked with the airline first because every airline has specifications on what they consider a suitcase and what they consider oversized. So I bought 2 of the largest dimensions of a suitcase that my airline would accept. And then I literally practiced packing. So leading up to moving to England, I would pack these suitcases. I would weigh them. Typically they were overweight and I didn't want to pay a lot of charges. Airlines will really charge you quite a bit if it's considered oversized or overweight. So I'd pack them, I'd weigh them. They're too heavy. Okay, take everything out. Repack them with less stuff, weigh them. Okay, this is the right way. Then I'm kind of like pulling things out and putting things in. You have to be so critical about what you want to pack because it is not worth bringing everything. So when I first moved, I had these 2 giant suitcases. I had my carry-on, like a little rolly carry-on, and I had a purse, and that was that. So whatever didn't fit didn't make the cut. You just have to be brutal about what you want to actually bring and what you are actually going to make use of. Saying that, the first time I went home with quite an empty suitcase so I could refill it with some more stuff from Canada and bring that back with me. But after that point, I really, what I had is what I had. I didn't bring over furniture. I didn't bring over big items. It was really like, what I need to survive. Now, if you are a family that is moving your whole family to the UK, maybe you got some kids, maybe you got a pet or whatever, and you want to bring furniture, that's going to be a different story. You're going to have to look at shipping options. For me, as a young foreigner, I was just going to have whatever could fit in my suitcase, and I have bought the remaining stuff in the UK. Quite a few people asked about British words, which is so interesting because I had the same sort of internal dialogue early on when I was a foreigner. So the question is, am I rude for continuing to use my country's words, or am I rude for trying to use British words and sounding like an idiot? And this is a dilemma that I had as well. So for me, I tried very hard to use the British equivalent when speaking to people I didn't know. So talking to my boss at work, talking to coworkers, talking to people on the phone. Maybe I'm talking to the council or something, or I'm talking about a bill with like a supplier. I'm always very aware and trying very hard to use the British word for them, because Brits are going to expect that word to be used. I want to be polite. I use their word. Now, when I'm speaking with friends or family or people who know me or have a close connection with, I don't stress about it. I just say what I'm gonna say. Over the years, I have slowly started to naturally say more and more British words. But not all of them. It's a long process, but I try not to sweat it too much with people who know me and who care about me. It's not that big of a deal. But I do try to say the British word when speaking to a British person. That is what they expect. Maybe not so much the slang, but I do try to say the word. And yeah, it does sound weird coming from this accent, and perhaps you have a similar accent. It does sound weird. But I think it's more polite to just say the word. That's what they're expecting. And over time, those are the words that you are going to start naturally saying anyway. Next up, I had quite a few questions from foreigners interested in the beginning part, in the settling in. This one in particular said, how long did it take you to feel settled in? Was it still super lonely and weird after the 5 months of living hell, or did you feel like you were used to the routine and had made friends? When I speak about my time in the UK at the beginning, I often refer to the 5 months of living hell. The first 5 months were horrible. It was horrible. Everything is different. You are out of your comfort zone in every element. Maybe you're still trying to find a place to live. Maybe you don't know how to get around. Maybe you don't know what food things to buy. You're trying to find a job. You're worried about money. You don't know anybody. The whole thing is very difficult. So I often call it the 5 months of living hell. Now, when those 5 months finished, it wasn't like turning a switch. It wasn't like, oh, I'm settled and all is right with the world. What I found for me personally was the first 5 months really tough. And then I remember I was walking home from work. So I used to take the bus. I'd commute on the bus, get off the bus, walk home. I was walking home. The weather was quite nice, which does help. And I just all of a sudden noticed like, hey, I don't feel as stressed as I have been. And I think that was sort of the turning point where once you sort of get a routine, routines help so much. We are creatures of routine. When you get a routine, maybe you've got your first job, you have a place to live, you're sort of getting to know your neighborhood, you're feeling a bit more settled, things are a lot more manageable. Now, just because I was feeling a bit more settled does not mean I still don't have bad days. I still have bad days now, being here for 6 years, but I think it's less about being a foreigner and more just about life. I have bad days because that is what happens sometimes, but I feel a lot more capable of dealing with them, and I feel a lot more like grounded here now that I've been here for so long. I have my routine. My routine does change over the years. It's quite different to how it was when I first moved here, but I do feel just much more settled and grounded. Still have bad days, but it's kind of just part of life. What I would say for new foreigners, the first few months are going to be tough. Unless you're like crazy extroverted and that stuff doesn't bother you, then maybe not. But in general, I'd say the beginning is difficult just because everything is different. So my recommendation would just be, go easy on yourself, be patient with yourself, be kind with yourself. You are going to figure it out. It's going to take some time, just the way it is. But as you develop a routine, things become much more manageable and become much more fun and exciting rather than scary and overwhelming. So even if you don't have a job yet and you're still kind of like trying to find your footing, make a routine. Get up every day at the same time, set an alarm. Maybe you spend, after breakfast, you spend 2 or 3 hours applying for jobs, working on your CV, whatever. Then maybe you schedule in lunch. Then maybe you schedule in a walk. Walk around your neighborhood, explore your area, explore your neighborhood, figure out how things are connected and how to get around. Then maybe later in the afternoon, you watch some TV. Daytime British TV is something to see, I promise you. And then you schedule in dinner around a certain time, and then maybe you schedule in a Skype or Zoom or FaceTime call with your family. Make your own routine, even if you don't have a job yet, because it really does help. Next up, we had quite a few comments about jobs. This one in particular said, do you think that needing or holding a visa keeps you from getting better jobs? Yes, it does. Unfortunately, I don't really know a way around this, but yes, if you are a visa holder, your visa has an expiry date, it is very tough to get companies to take a chance on you. From a business standpoint, it makes sense. Like, why would a business want to hire you and pay all the money to get you up to speed and the time and maybe training and kind of holding your hand a little bit while you get settled? A lot of companies just can't be bothered. They would much rather hire a British person and not have to deal with that. Especially if your visa, like mine, has an expiry date. And while you may be able to renew that visa, it is not guaranteed that that renewal will be approved. So a lot of companies just don't want to deal with it. I think a good place to start with this is knowing that it's not you. It can be really demoralizing to be rejected time and time again for jobs or promotions. It is not necessarily about you, unless you suck. I imagine you don't suck. It's more likely because you are a foreigner. So sometimes just knowing that kind of helps. It's not you. A lot of people ask, how do I get that promotion? Or even how do I get that job that I want? There's a couple of things you can try if you're willing to try. If you have a job kind of in the career that you are interested in, but you are struggling to get promoted, I would suggest have a meeting with your manager, set a meeting with HR, have some sort of formal performance meeting and just say, hey, I'm passionate about this. I want this. What can I do to make it happen? And they may say, well, actually, it's kind of down to training. Like maybe they really want you to have a UK qualification. And they could tell you that if you ask. So that might be studying locally in the evenings. That may be studying part-time with a place like Open University. Like it may be because you don't have that little UK qualification on your CV and that's holding you back. But having a meeting with your manager, with HR, those are the people who will be able to definitively tell you what you could be doing to improve your chances. Now, if you are trying to get into the field that you want and you are having a bit of a struggle, this is really difficult. I would recommend either reaching out to someone in that sphere or at that company or something and say, hey, I know I'm a foreigner, I'm on a visa, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what my degree is in, I really want to get in the door, do you have any ideas? You may be surprised that people actually respond because typically, most times, people are pretty friendly and people do like helping other people. So you may actually get a response. Or perhaps you find some like volunteering opportunities or interning opportunities in that sphere to kind of get your foot in the door while you work a job perhaps you're not very excited about. Maybe you just need to get something. Working at Tesco, working at Greg's, I don't know, you gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta pay your bills. But also see like volunteering, intern, that kind of stuff to see if you can kind of like get your foot in the door. Now, of course, if you are looking to join a career path that is considered a shortage here in the UK, you are going to have a much different time. Those are things like teachers. The UK is always needing teachers. Where I come from, Ontario specifically, we produce so many more teachers than we need. It is extremely competitive to get a teaching job in Canada. That's why so many Canadians come over to the UK to fill that shortage. Now, unfortunately, between you and me, having worked alongside teachers here in the UK, it's a difficult job, and there are quite a few issues around teaching in the UK, which perhaps is why nobody really wants those jobs. However, if you are a teacher and you're looking for a job, the UK usually needs you. So yes, holding a visa is probably going to limit you in terms of career progression or even getting a job in the first place. It sucks. I'm so sorry. There are a couple of things that you can do to improve your chances, even finding like a really good boss. Some bosses are happy to overlook the visa thing and put their faith in you, but they are kind of difficult to find. For me personally, I wasn't coming here to work in a particular field. I didn't go to university, I went to college. I was happy to I just needed a job, and I've kind of sort of worked my way through that. But if you're trying to find a particular field, you do have to work that much harder to make it happen. For me, I got hired my first job through a temp agency. So they were trying to fill a position at a local college. I was like, yes, please give me a temp position. Not a lot of people want that type of work. So it was kind of the only way I could get my foot in the door. So the contract was only for 3 months, but I thought, you know what? I'm not getting any other jobs right now. I got to do something. What ended up happening was every 3 months, the college would renew the 3 months and then renew the 3 months and renew the 3 months. And before I knew it, I had been a temp worker for a year in this position. And at that point, the college decided to hire me as a college employee. So they sort of like bought me from the agency. And that was how I was able to get my first full-time position. So sometimes, unfortunately, you gotta take chances on positions that Brits perhaps do not want. Not many people want to be a temp agency worker, but I can do it. So I did it, and it ended up leading to something. It won't always lead to something, but you never know. Now, a few people have asked about crime. Yay! Yes, there is crime in the UK. You can't avoid it. It's like any other place. Do I feel more scared living in the UK versus living in Canada? No, not really. Like with any country, there are going to be certain areas that are more likely to have crime or maybe more violent crime. Of course, big cities. London, of course, has its troubles. You're probably going to experience or see or be around more violent crime living in London than you would living in a small countryside village. So it does depend on where you end up. But no, I don't necessarily feel threatened or scared here. Knock on wood? Should I knock on wood? I should knock on wood. Next up, we have questions about cars. What's it like to have a car? How difficult is it to have a car? All that kind of car stuff. So this in itself is quite a big topic. I'm gonna give you like the bullet point notes. My top recommendation is if you are Canadian specifically, you can change your Canadian driver's license to a British driver's license without doing any tests. I know. So even if you are not looking to drive in the UK, I would really recommend exchanging your license for a British one, because then you have a British photo ID that you can use in so many different situations. Now, what's it like owning a car? Well, I transferred my license to a British one. However, that means I can only drive automatics. Typically, Automatics are more expensive in the UK because they are less common. If you want to drive a manual or a standard transmission, whatever you like to call it, you would have to redo all the tests to be able to get a manual license. So that's going to be something what you have to decide whether it's worth it or not for you. So for me, I transferred my license. I bought a used automatic. I enjoyed it. It was great. I was able to commute to work very easy. I was able to get around just fine. Car insurance is extremely expensive for a foreigner, which, yeah, it makes sense. But overall, yeah, it was great. I would recommend that you book a refresher lesson. So driving schools will have these lessons that are basically like for people who already have their license, but maybe they haven't driven in a long time. Maybe they don't have a lot of confidence. Maybe they're foreign and they're not used to driving here. I would 100% recommend booking one of these lessons. So for me, I booked I think it was a 2-hour refresher lesson. It was like a bit expensive, but I was not confident just getting into the car and driving. I had never driven on the left side of the road. Don't do roundabouts in Canada that much, and I'm not familiar with any of the signs. So, booked the refresher lesson. It was wonderful. I drove around with this driving instructor. I got so much more confident. He helped me do roundabouts, helped me with the signs, helped me drive on the left side of the road, and that really, it was so worth it. It was so worth it. So currently I don't have a car. I had to get rid of my car when I was going back to Canada. So I actually sold it to We Buy Any Car, not sponsored. Can you imagine? It's not sponsored, but honestly, I would recommend it. It was so easy, and perhaps I could have gotten more money if I sold my car privately, but I just could not be bothered to do all of that and make sure all the paperwork was in order. No, I couldn't do it. So We Buy Any Car, they took care of it all. I got a decent amount of money for my crappy little car. And in the future, I hope to have another car, automatic, because I only have an automatic license. It's not necessary per se like it is in Canada, but it certainly is helpful. Now, if you are moving to London or another big city, please do not get a car right away, because I think you're gonna find that you don't need it. Even for me, living down in the southeast of Kent, in towns and villages, I can still get around okay on public transport. It's not totally necessary for me to have a car. Of course, it limits the amount of places that I can get to and the times I can get to places, but currently I am getting by just fine without a car, but in the future, I definitely will get another one. Next question we have, what is an unexpected challenge you faced in the first few weeks of moving abroad? Grocery shopping. Grocery shopping is one of those things that you do it on autopilot. You don't even think about it. You know what you need and what it looks like and what brands you like. And it's just like, yeah, you don't even think. And that was something that was really surprising. I thought, okay, grocery shopping, easy. I can handle this. But actually going to Tesco or Asda or Sainsbury's, and I'm having to go up and down every aisle. I'm having to like pick up things and read them, because from sight, I don't really know necessarily what it is. I didn't know which brands I liked. I didn't know which products were better or worse. Yeah, I did not expect grocery shopping to be difficult, but it took me a while. And really the only way to get past this is with time. So now I can pop into my local Tesco. I know exactly the brands that I like. I know exactly where things are. I know which products I like more than others. And that only really comes with time. Having said that, still to this day, one of my favorite things is going to the store, going to a corner store, going to a shop and buying food and drink that I've never had before. I love taste testing stuff. As you can probably see on my YouTube channel, it is so much fun to find new things. And even though I've lived here for 6 years, I am still discovering new stuff that I totally love. So definitely my recommendation, experiment with food and drink, try as much as you can, and with time, you will figure out the stuff that you love. Thank you guys so much for submitting questions. I hope that was helpful. If you have more questions, please just leave a comment down below. We can always do a part 2, perhaps. But if you are interested in learning more about living in the UK and things that can make living in the UK a bit easier, check out this video where I share my most helpful mobile apps. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!